remember being like, okay, God, what is happening? I thought we were good. I'm saved. We're supposed to be good. This is not good. And I was just so frustrated at God that this was what life was like as a Christian in my head. That ended up coming out. I had told a friend of mine that told a cousin of mine, this is what living in a small town is like. And it got back to my parents. So it actually came out, and my mom, being a child of domestic abuse, was not playing games here and, demanded my honesty. And I was honest with her and tried to play it off. And I'm so thankful because she shut it down, and she called him and his family over, or parents over, for a family meeting and confronted what had happened and was like, you are not to be near my daughter ever again. And if it becomes a problem, there will be a restraining order filed. And it ended, like nothing ever happened after that. But I just remember it all coming to a head at that point when it was brought into the light and that darkness was being exposed and I had to face it. Then it was like, well, what about this? What about this? Don't you remember that night? That was worse than what he did. So I think I finally told my mom I need to go to therapy. And that was where, for the first time, I admitted I was raped. And it was the first time 4 months later, like a year after being baptized, I was finally facing this trauma. And I was just really, really not sure how I was going to get through it. I started to work through that and heal from that. And then I went to college at GCU, now struggling with new sins. I was the GCU dancer, and it really became my identity. And I still was struggling with these toxic relationships, bad friendships, bad romantic relationships, and sexual sins. And I had just completely accepted the fact that that's why men were interested in me. And I tried to convince myself that I was okay with that, because I really believed that would be less painful than going through rape again. Or even being told, well, then I don't want to be with you. What changed things for me was not making the dance team. Tryouts happened March, April. And I remember just being so down, I almost was feeling depressed again, but more just apathetic towards life. I was numb. I was still numb and trying to act like I was okay, but I didn't even practice for auditions. I didn't care.
Yeah.
But then when I didn't make the team, I was still shocked. It was all of a sudden, everything that I had identified myself with was gone. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how to process that. I remember on my way back from auditions, I ran into the guy that I had been basically hooking up with, and I had told him what happened. And instead of comforting me, he told me that he would never date someone that wasn't a dancer. That's why he was into me. And he told me to delete his number.
What?
I was just slapped in the face again with this brutal honesty. I went back to my room and just lost it. And my lifelong friend that was my roommate at the time, was out of town on vacation. So I called my college friend that I had met in psychology class, and she came over, and I cannot thank her enough for what she said in this moment. She reminded me that my identity is not in what I do, or who my friends are, or in who I date, or in my sin, but they're in Christ. And she's like, I think you've been forgetting that.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I know that can be hard. And like you said, this is your first time sharing it. So a big part of healing is talking about it and is sharing about it. And the more you, the first times you share it, you're reliving it, you're still feeling it. And the more times you tell it, it's a faint memory of how you felt, but you don't feel it as strongly over time, is what I've noticed. There's things that I'm still healing from too, that happened, within the past couple of years even. And I honestly, this is a good reminder for me too, to know okay, I healed from all those other things. I'm going to heal from this too. It's just time in sharing and growing closer to God in that. So I'm excited to hear
The
your
redemptive
final
part.
notes. Yeah, the redemptive
Yeah,
part.
yeah, I agree. And I think for so long I've been withholding from telling this story out of like protecting him, which is odd to admit. But I think that like growing up in a small town, like to be completely honest, if people thought about it, they could figure out exactly who I was talking about. And that kind of scares me. But I don't care anymore. I think being married and being more secure in my relationship with the Lord and understanding that like I can't do anything legally about what happened anymore, and that really sucks. I wish I could go back and do things differently, but I can still. I don't have to shut myself up to protect him out of fear of like what could happen, because now I'm not sharing some pain that I went through that now has been so impactful on the rest of like my life. For what, like, God obviously is such a purposeful, intentional God, and I feel like I'm being disobedient by just keeping like I'm not really. It's to protect myself too, you know.
Mhm.
Like I say to protect him, but I guess being honest, it's to protect myself too. But yeah, so I guess sharing it is just like the first step in owning it and saying like it is a big part of me and who I am today, and I'm not gonna let him define my story any more than he already has. So I don't want him to get to decide whether or not I share or what I share. I want that to be up to me and
Yeah.
to God and to my husband, and
Amen.
that's it.